Well, just days after the setback at the International Court of Justice, where Israel faces serious charges of genocide, Israelis are up in arms, calling for the sacking of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In the latest, scuffles have begun to break out between Israeli police and protesters, and major anti-government protests have begun to spark in Tel Aviv. The demonstration included a march towards Israel's Ministry of Defense. Protesters are now calling for fresh elections, and even though Netanyahu still has close to 2 years left in his term, demonstrators are also criticizing efforts to bring home the hostages. The hostages are still held by Hamas amid the ongoing war. Israeli security forces, including the mounted police, tried to block some of the crowd on their route, and some of the protesters were also detained. And a separate rally was held outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence. Netanyahu had earlier given a speech pushing back against the ruling of the International Court of Justice, and the ruling was against the loss of civilian lives and destruction in the Gaza offensive. Several prominent citizens, including national security officials, have sent a letter to Israel's president and Speaker of Parliament, and the prominent citizens are demanding that Netanyahu should be removed from office, claiming that the Prime Minister is an existential threat to Israel. Now, Netanyahu is being accused of being unfit of holding the office of the Prime Minister of Israel, and the list of signatories includes 3 eminent Nobel Prize winners. But Prime Minister Netanyahu strongly reacted to the situation, and he said that Israel would go to the fullest extent to protect itself from Gaza.
In this difficult week in which we lost heroic fighters, I say again to you, the citizens of Israel, that our commitment is to fulfill their will and achieve all the goals of this war, to eliminate Hamas, to ensure the return of all hostages, and to ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel.
Netanyahu also hit out at Qatar for allegedly hosting the leaders of Hamas.
As for Qatar, I do not go back on a single word I said. I will not give up even one path of putting pressure on Hamas or anyone who can put pressure on Hamas to return our abductees. Qatar hosts the leaders of Hamas. It also finances Hamas.
Qatar מארחת את ראשי החמאס.
More than 100 Israeli hostages are still believed to be in Hamas detention, and the hostages were taken by Hamas in a surprise attack that was executed on October 7th. Now, American negotiators have drafted a new agreement that may finally temper down the crisis in Gaza. And this new agreement sets to accommodate both Israel and Hamas's terms, including the release of hostages, along with a pause in fighting for up to 2 months. And as reported by a top American media publication, the report posits an initial 30-day halt in the fighting in a first phase, which will allow the release of female, elderly, underage and wounded hostages that are still held by Hamas. Another second phase will attempt to wind down military operations from both sides over the course of another 30 days. Washington's draft will be presented at a summit in Paris today, and in attendance will be representatives of Israel, Qatar, Egypt and the US. CIA Director Bill Burns is also expected to debrief his Mossad counterpart. The Egypt intelligence chief, along with Qatari Prime Minister, also scheduled to meet today in an emergency session in Cairo, are members of the Arab League along with Palestinian representatives.
It calls attention in particular to the Defense Minister of Israel. announced
The League will deliberate on the ICJ's verdict in case of genocide allegations against Israel. The ICJ has demanded that Israel try to contain death and damage in its military offensive on the tiny coastal enclave, with an emphasis on measures to ensure no incitement of genocide or any action that takes place against the people of Gaza. And as stated by a permanent representative of the State of Palestine to the Arab League, this meeting has been requested by the Palestinian state in coordination with Morocco. Now, Morocco currently serves as the president of the 160th session of the Arab League. And this league is expected to take a unified stand on the International Court's verdict. Now, global protests against the Israeli campaign in Gaza continue. Thousands of people have come out in droves on the streets of Madrid, Athens, Milan and Rome. In Yemen's capital city, thousands took to streets in support of Houthi strikes in Gaza and in solidarity with Gazans. Calls chastising Western sanctions along with condemnation of airstrikes in northern Yemen were also raised. Meanwhile, in the American city of Oakland, protesters took to the streets condemning the Biden administration for supporting Israel in its deadly campaign in Gaza. And those in attendance chanted and held aloft signs decrying the war in West Asia.
Come up and maybe sit in the front.
Now, several Western countries, including the US, UK and Germany, have decided to withhold funding to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinians. And this after Israel accused 12 UNRWA employees of being involved in the October 7th attack. Philip Lazzarini, the head of the UN Relief and Works Agency, has expressed shock over this decision by the Western nations. Lazzarini has asked representatives of the nations to reconsider this decision and terming this decision a stain on all parties involved and additional collective punishment on Gazans. Now, earlier, the UNRWA commissioner stated that Israeli authorities provided the humanitarian agency with intel on the alleged involvement of several employees during the attacks, but no further information or evidence regarding their role was shared with the authorities. The nature of their involvement has also not been disclosed so far. The Australian Foreign Minister suspended funding to UNRWA on Saturday, conveying deep concern over these allegations. Canada's International Development Minister also announced a temporary pause on any additional funding to UNRWA pending an investigation. Italian Foreign Minister also took to social media platform X to announce suspension of aid to the humanitarian agency. Now, earlier on Friday, the White House also welcomed calls for investigations against the agency.
Yeah, we have suspended any outlying or yet to be allocated funds for UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency. Pending the results of this investigation, we're obviously going to watch this very closely. We welcome the UN Secretary General and the Commissioner General of UNRWA, their comments today calling for a full investigation.
And in contrast, spokesperson for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas criticized the decision by some countries to withhold funding for the body on Saturday.
Simultaneously taken during the war in Gaza sends a wrong message. There is a war against the Palestinian people. This decision is incorrect and should be stopped immediately. We urge all these countries to repay the UNRWA because it's a humanitarian issue.
The UNRWA was established in 1949 following the First Arab-Israeli War, and it provides services like schooling, primary health care and humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, Syria and Lebanon. Now, relations between UNRWA with Israel have deteriorated in the last few days when the UN agency claimed that tank shelling hit a shelter for displaced people in Gaza's main city of Khan Yunis. Now, in more global news, US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are scheduled to have a phone call in the spring. On the other hand, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is slated to make another trip to Beijing this year. Now, the two nations are pursuing additional high-level diplomacy to manage competition in their bilateral relationship. And this comes after US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi concluded more than 12 hours of talks in Bangkok. Now, the White House described the talks in Bangkok as candid, substantive and constructive discussions that touched on global and regional issues, including Russia's war against Ukraine, West Asia tensions, North Korea, the South China Sea and Burma. Now, in a statement, the Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry said that both countries will make good use of current strategic communication channels to properly handle sensitive issues. Beijing and Washington have clashed in recent years on issues from technology and trade to human rights, as well as over the self-ruled island of Taiwan and competing claims in the South China Sea. And this comes after Taiwan's defense ministry said that it detected 11 Chinese military planes that were crossing Taiwan Strait's median line in the past 24 hours. In Bangkok, Sullivan also asked Yi to press Tehran for an end to attacks on Red Sea shipping carried out by Yemen's Houthi rebels. Now, the U.S. is already seeing a fewer seizures of illicit chemicals that were used to make a fentanyl at U.S. airports, and after China moved to shut down companies that make them, now U.S. and China will be holding a formal working group on counter-narcotics in Beijing on January 30th to 31st. And in a big political development coming in from the Indian state of Bihar, Nitish Kumar resigned as the Chief Minister of Bihar. And now, according to sources, he has staked claim to form the government in the state with the help of BJP and its allies. He has submitted a letter of support to the governor with the required endorsements. Listen in to what Nitish Kumar had to say after he submitted his resignation earlier today.
आज हमने मुख्यमंत्री से इस्तीफा दे दिया और जो सरकार थी उसको भी समाप्त करने का हमने आज गवर्नर साहब को दे दिया। कितना काम हम कर रहे थे और उधर भी लोग हम अलायंस करवाए, क्या क्या करवाने में लगे और कोई कुछ काम ही नहीं कर रहे थे, तो सबको लेकर के तकलीफ और यहाँ पर भी लोगों को तकलीफ, तो ये हो गया तो हमने बोलना छोड़ दिया था।
His swearing-in ceremony is likely to happen today, and according to sources, Nitish Kumar will get 2 deputy chief ministers from BJP. Now, with his resignation, Nitish Kumar has exited the 28-party opposition bloc India, INDIA, and is all set to join ranks with the BJP ahead of the elections.
से प्रेशर पड़ रहा था लालू यादव का नीतीश कुमार जी के ऊपर तेजस्वी को ताजपोशी के लिए, तो फिर बिहार दोबारा जंगल राज में आ जाता। इससे मुक्ति मिली। अब भारतीय जनता पार्टी जंगल राज नहीं आने देगा, लालू जी की ताजपोशी नहीं होने देगी।
And well, this is not the first time that Nitish Kumar has made these changes. In fact, in 2013, Nitish Kumar ended JDU's 17-year political alliance with the NDA that was led by the BJP. And this was because he disagreed with the choice of Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister candidate. Now, 2 years later, in the run-up to the Bihar Assembly elections, Nitish joined hands with arch-rival Lalu Prasad-led RJD and the Congress, and subsequently he became the chief minister. However, this alliance ended in 2017 as corruption allegations against RJD's deputy chief minister Tejasvi Yadav led him to break up with the RJD. Now, Nitish again forged an alliance with the BJP and formed their government. However, ties between the two parties again frayed, and in 2022, Nitish again dumped BJP and formed a government with the RJD and Congress. Now, the next assembly polls in Bihar are due in October-November 2025. And with Bihar switching to NDA, the BJP is witnessing an upswing just ahead of the general elections due in April this year. And as it hopes to improve on its 2019 tally, and on the other hand, the opposition INDIA alliance experiment looks like a non-starter with election schedule that is not even announced yet. Now, soldiers are known for their valor on the battlefield. They are known to be brave and courageous and merciless for their foes, but they also, at times, turn saviors. Before we go any further, listen in to the first-hand account of a merchant ship's captain after his vessel took a heavy blow.
I really thank Indian warship INS Visakhapatnam. They had done a really tremendous job. We had actually lost the hope that we won't be able to fight this fire, but these guys were really tough. They have really done a tremendous job, and hats off to Indian Navy, who said that we will come on board.
The Indian Navy warship Visakhapatnam came to the rescue of a distressed vessel in the Red Sea on Saturday, and merchant vessel Marlin Luanda came under Houthi attack on Friday. It was hit by an anti-ship ballistic missile, causing a huge fire on board. It was Indian Navy's nuclear, biological and chemical damage control team who got on board the burning vessel to help the crew members on board. Now, the firefighting team included 10 Indian naval personnel, and after an operation lasting close to 6 hours, the team successfully brought the fire under control. Indian Navy says that it remains steadfast in her commitment towards safety of merchant shipping and seafarers. And the crew on board the distressed included 22 Indians and 1 Bangladeshi citizen. The United States and France's warships also responded to the distress call and provided material support. Now, this is not the first instance. Indian Navy carried out a rescue operation in the region. INS Visakhapatnam also came to MV Gengo Picardy's rescue after it was hit by a drone in the Gulf of Aden on January 17th. INS Chennai and its marine commandos, along with P-81 long-range patrol aircraft, prevented a hijacking of a Liberia-flagged MV Leela Norfolk on January 5th. And against the rising threat of Houthis in the Red Sea, Indian Navy has stepped up its presence in the region, and by deploying frontline destroyers and frigates. India's classrooms overflow with aspirations, yet only 10% of working-age women make it to the workforce. Barriers abound, but so do possibilities. Take a look at our next report as we explore the gender gap, the challenges, and the path towards a just future for India's women.
In the vibrant tapestry of India's socio-economic landscape, a stark reality persists. A report by the Centre for Monitoring the Indian Economy highlights significant disparity between women's enrollment in schools and their representation in the workforce. The report shows that only 10% of working-age Indian women were either employed or actively seeking jobs in 2022. That's despite women now having greater access to education across India. The ratio of female enrollment in primary education rose from 101.8% in 2018-19 to 104.8% in 2021-22. In upper primary education, this ratio rose from 87.74% in 2018-19 to 94.9% in 2021-22. But the rising enrollment ratio is not translating into greater workforce participation. In 2023, men's workforce participation in India rose to 67%, while women's participation declined from approximately 36% in 2021 to slightly more than 33% in 2023. Experts note that women often face challenges securing jobs that demand hard skills. Moreover, several roles seek extended hours, night shifts, or even extensive travel, putting millions of women at a disadvantage. Government policies promoting education, skill development, entrepreneurship, workplace inclusivity, and childcare are essential to encourage more women to enter the workforce. As we turn our eyes towards Budget 2024, the question of women's workforce participation cannot be ignored. It's a golden opportunity to bridge the gap between education and employment, weaving policies that empower India's women. Bureau Report, WION World is One.